Hey guys, so today I'm going to be looking at a Quasar rat PowerShell loader and just some methods that you can use to quickly decode that and extract a C2 address. So I've already downloaded the file from Malware. I've unzipped it using the password infected, and I've just created a copy with a slightly better file name. And I usually do that in case I break the script. I can easily just go grab the original one and make another copy. So since I've already done that, I can go ahead and open it with Notepad++. And yeah, immediately we can see some bytecodes, which are probably used to create a PE file. You can scroll down, see that that's actually used to create a VBS file. So that's a VBS script. Oh no, the second one's a VBS script. This is a PE file. We can scroll down a little bit and see a reference to decompress. So we know that either that VBS content or those bytecodes are compressed in some way. You can see a reference to gzip stream, so it's likely gunzip compression. And we can see a bunch of stuff here. Not super useful right now. And we can see a bunch more encoded text. And what we can also see is this URL decode to bytes. So that's likely URL encoded, in addition to some of that gunzip compression. If we scroll down to the end of that, we can see a reference to decompress again. We can see a reference to app-launch.exe. That's a pretty good indicator that that's where it's going to be injected into. And we can see that it sleeps and then runs something. So what I'm going to do is just grab that URL encoded text. And I'm going to attempt to use CyberChef to URL decode it and attempt some kind of decompression. So I'm going to take that, throw it in CyberChef, and let's see if we can URL decode it. Hit bake. And we get what looks like a bunch of junk text. But since we know that it might be compressed, we can go ahead and try and decompress it using gunzip. And there we go. We get an MZ header and presumably a PE file. Since the script was marked as Quasar, I'm just going to call that quasar.bin. And I'm just going to copy that into my folder that I'm working from. And since that's a PE file, I'm going to open that with Detected Easy, just to get an overview of what it is, make sure it's not broken in any way. And we can see it's a 32-bit file, it's .NET. Entropy is not super high, so we know it's probably not a loader. If any of these lines were extremely high and kind of towards the top, that would indicate a loader, but that's not the case here. Okay, since it's .NET, I'm going to throw that in DNspy. And just wait for that to load. Looks like that's loaded okay and has a bunch of references to X client, whatever that is. And rather than click through all of these individually, I'm just going to jump straight to the entry point and see what's executed first. And yeah, we can see all of this junk. All of the variable names and method names are all of this Unicode junk, which isn't very useful. We can also see on the left-hand side that junk is used everywhere. So rather than deal with that, I'm going to unload the file and use de4 to clean that up. We can do that by opening a command prompt in our folder with our Quasar file and just type de4.quasar.bin. And we can see that it's detected an obfuscator and it's it's renamed all of that junk. Just going to exit out of that. It's got a new file named Quasar cleaned, which is the output of de4. Go ahead and open that in DNspy. And see if it looks any better. Jump again to the entry point because I don't want to click through everything. And yeah, we can see it looks much, much better. We don't get any useful names for the code that was obfuscated before, but we do get a name that's much easier to work with. And we can also see on the left-hand side that everything's been renamed to something more reasonable. The reason I jumped to the entry point is that any kind of IP or C2 or any kind of configuration related stuff is usually at the beginning of the code, very close to the entry point. And by jumping to the entry point, I can get to that part as soon as possible. You can see one of the first things that's executed is this S method 0. So go ahead and click on that. And we can see a bunch of strings that are being acted upon. If we click any of those strings, we can see that there are a bunch of base 64 encoded stuff. And that's a pretty good sign that all of these strings are something config related, so we want to hone in on that. And since I'm in a virtual machine and I can run the code without really worrying about anything, go ahead and just set a breakpoint on the first string and see if we can hit that by running the file. And yeah, it looks like we can. That won't always be the case if there's some kind of anti-analysis, anti-VM check, but it looks like that's not the case here. So what I can do now is step over each of these methods and see if I can get a decoded string. And you want to make sure your locals window is open, because that will show you what's returned from each method call. First one returns nothing. Second one returns dynew._ios. No idea what that is. We get something that looks like a version number. And there we go. We get what looks like a C2 address. Nathwood 23, mysynology.net, port 6750. And if we go over the next one, we get another string. client.exe, which might be a file name, a mutex name, and we get a reference to Quasar client startup. So that's some pretty good confirmation that this is Quasar Rat, or at least some variant of it. You also see reference to logs, and yeah, that's not super useful, but it's something. Now, if we want to view all of these at once, what we can do is go to Windows, open up a watch window, remove all of this, which was from a different file, and just input these strings. I'm just going to copy and paste them because it's easier. And that gives us the ability to just see all of the decoded values in one place. Do that again. A version number, string related to something, C2 address, most likely, and just a couple more strings, which are something. And yeah, there's our configuration for that Quasar rat file. It's just all there in one nice view. And what we can start to do now is take each of these, for example, string 1, which is a C2 address, edit the field and rename it to something like C2 address. And now the code looks a little bit better, and we can keep doing that for all of the decoded strings. And we can apply that method throughout the rest of the file to essentially give all of these class names and method names something better. But yeah, there you go. That's all you need to do to decode that PowerShell script and get a C2. If we jump back to that script, it's not loading now, but we could probably go ahead and decode those other byte arrays and strings and see what they contain, but most likely that VBS script is just used to persist the file. And given the name of run PE, which was on the very first blob, I'm going to assume that's a loader, which is going to be used to execute or inject the payload we just decoded. But since we have the payload, it doesn't really matter. We can just leave it here and take our config.